Okay, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think the Newcastle Gateshead Quayside is one of the most exciting city places in the country. It's rich in art and culture, pubs and restaurants. It's a working place too, and you can live down here. And of course, it's got fantastic architecture and bridges, especially bridges. There isn't a better group anywhere. And finally, the river itself. Locals have always loved the River Tyne, but what they used to say was, the Tyne, the Coley Tyne, the queen of all the rivers. Well, it's not Coley anymore. There are salmon in there, and there are seals. You could wash your smalls in there if you wanted to. It didn't used to be like this. It used to be dirty and polluted, and the quayside itself was no better. By the 1960s and 70s, the quayside was in a really rotten condition. The ships had nearly all gone, and the banks here were lined with more or less deserted and derelict sheds. Hardly anybody ever came down here to have fun. Certainly nobody lived here. Tyneside had turned its back on the river. What happened next, in my opinion, was a great story. Basically, people started to fight back. A few firms and businesses clung tenaciously to their old premises, and a few forward-looking groups made a conscious decision to move down here. Art and culture was the starting point. This classic quayside alleyway was where a group of filmmakers and photographers came in 1969 from London to set up an arts cooperative. They called themselves Amber Films, after a bottle of beer, in fact, Newcastle Amber Ale, and they're still here. And this is their gallery. They were interested, 40 years later, they still are interested, in social realism and in working with working class communities in the northeast. And their boldness in coming down here near the river set the scene for the rediscovery of the quayside. Nowadays, the quayside has an international reputation for the quality of art and culture available on the river banks. But I think it's fair to say that probably none of it would be here if Amber Films hadn't had the vision to come here first.
Amber Films and this place, don't forget, because the Live Theatre Company has also played a huge part in bringing the quayside back to life. It was founded in 1973 by Jeff Gillam and the actress Val McLean to create plays of a political nature for North East audiences, in particular working class people, people who didn't go to the theatre. The plays had a strong regional identity, and we used actors from the same background, people who could speak the same language. People like me, because I was lucky enough to become a founder member, and I remain one of its strongest supporters to this day. In fact, over the years, live theatre has been a fantastic breeding ground for some of the best actors and finest writers from the northeast of England. At first, we took the plays out to pubs and clubs, on the beaches, schools, miners' welfare halls, community centres, in fact, anywhere where we could find an audience. But in 1982, the company moved here and started to build what's now become one of the most important new writing companies in the country. It opened its doors in 1985 with a new play by Tom Hadaway called The Long Line. A fish merchant by trade, Tom, who sadly passed away in 2006, was one of the finest writers ever to emerge from this region. His mentor was the late, great C.P. Taylor. Mind you, we just called him Cecil. And this theatre is dedicated to his memory. And then there was Alan Plater, Phil Woods, Julia Darling, Michael Chaplin, son of Sid Chaplin, another legendary writer. More recently, there's been Sean O'Brien, Peter Strawn, and Lee, Mr. Billy Elliot Hall. Loads of wonderful plays all performed here. In fact, some of the plays have gone right around the world. The Filleting Machine, for example, by Tom Hadaway. A Nightingale Sang by Cecil. Alan Plater's Close the Coalhouse Door, Cooking with Elvis, and more recently, The Pitman Painters by Lee Hall, which triumphantly opened the refurbished theatre in the autumn of 2007 and plays at the National Theatre and the West End in London in 2008. So as you can see, for over 30 years, live theatre has been a vibrant part of the cultural life of the North East, and I'm proud to have been a part of it.
And now it's changed. It's been done up a bit. Well, quite a lot, really. First of all, there's this terrific new staircase. I love this. I think it's so bold to put such a glass tower right in the middle of the historic buildings. It's like shouting out, we've got things to be proud of as well. And there's a fantastic new bar and restaurant, comfy and pretty. In fact, all over the building there are lovely rooms to be in. All the old features have been kept, medieval flooring and stonework, 19th century strong room doors, old brickwork, some of it dating back to the 17th century houses that used to be on the site. Everything has been lovingly exposed and restored and retained. The building, with all of its history, all of the stages that it's passed through, can be looked at and enjoyed in a way that it never could before. And there have been practical improvements too, new workshop spaces and rehearsal rooms. This is the studio theatre, for example, where small-scale performances can take place. The low ceilings have been ingeniously cut away, turning the once cramped upper floors into a fantastic lofty space full of new technology where young and old can come to create and perform. And in the backstage area, necessary things like the dressing rooms...
Excuse me?
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. ...are infinitely better than they were. And finally, the theatre itself, the auditorium. Well, it's still the same size, the same space. It's still little and friendly and cosy. It's more comfy than it was, and the sightlines have been improved. I don't think you'll find that the plays that go on here will change very much. They'll still challenge and entertain in the way that they always have, and the talent will keep on coming. I think you'll find that this theatre is still very much live and still kicking.